In this video, I want to explain the dynamic of change and time. We think that time is a linear concept, that it goes from the past towards the future. But actually that's wrong. The truth is we are only living in the present moment, and every moment is a present moment. And time expands towards the past and towards the future equally as we repeat patterns. As we repeat patterns in the past, so we repeat those patterns in the future while we are always in one timeline. There are two energies or emotions that are associated to past and future, which would be like sadness is associated to past, and it is like a decreasing energy, and anxiety is related to future. It's like an energy that grows and grows. And when we repeat constantly a pattern in the past and in the future, as I was saying, we just stay in one timeline. This is, for example, when you look at your past and certain things have happened to you, and because of those things, they condition the way you react in the future. But we are not meant to repeat endlessly patterns in only one timeline. What we're supposed to do is change timelines so we can experiment new patterns. The thing is, since before, during patriarchy, what we did was we stretched and stretched one timeline, repeating and repeating until the lessons that we had to learn got to extremes where the change was inevitable and very, very painful. These lessons that we have to learn, we can learn it very quickly, but if we feel guilty, if we don't accept and integrate, if we don't do the shadow work and look inside, and guilt is blocking our alignment with self, and we are triggered by the fears of our egos, then we're in a sense condemned to repeat and repeat the same patterns once and over again. But if we realize that this is so, if we understand deeply the dynamic of change, then what happens is that when all we need to do is be conscious that we are actually repeating a pattern. We don't have to know where that pattern comes from. Because what I found is that as I was looking towards my past and seeing the patterns that I was repeating, I was still repeating the same patterns in the future. But I kept on looking, and I started seeing that those patterns also repeated in my ancestors' lives, and they were also repeated in my past lives. So if I were to look backwards, I could look forever back and back in time, and I would always find the same patterns. But then I would always be living the same patterns in the future. So the key to everything is drop guilt, stop feeling guilty, and stop looking at others who are guilty of doing things to you. And then just realize that you are repeating patterns. And once you realize that, let it go. Let go of that repetition. Just intend to let go of it. And then what happens, see normally we polarize either focusing on the past and then we're sad, or we focus in the future and then we're anxious. So we find people that tend to be depressive and sad, and we find people that tend to be stressed and anxious. When a timeline comes to an extreme of its repetition and it's time to change, then it's normal to feel both. But then what we have to do is we have to just let ourselves go. Normally we don't like to feel tired and run down, so we tend to take more caffeine, drink Red Bull or whatever that keeps on going. But that will only repeat the pattern more in the future. So what we have to do is we have to let ourselves just drop down. Let our energy drop as much as possible. When this happens, if we don't resist, the problem is we do. If we resist this fall of energy, then we are condemned to keep on repeating, and the experience becomes more and more dense and energetically, so it becomes more physical and more extreme. So if we realize that we can change a timeline just by realizing how we're repeating patterns, then we can do it at a softer level. So the experience doesn't have to be as dense. Because normally experience starts being something very subtle and it goes more and more dense. Here it is very dense at the bottom when we repeat it a lot, and it can be things like accidents or serious illnesses. But if we realize it before, then here it just affects us slightly, maybe psychologically. Maybe we are stressed a little bit, not too much. Maybe we're a bit uneasy. Maybe we're feeling a bit down. If we realize here, then we don't need to take the experience down to here, because in between we can have all sorts of different problems. We can lose relationships. We can lose jobs. We can have accidents, and it gets denser and denser and denser if we don't let the timeline change. So the second key is to stop resisting. Stop resisting when your energy goes down. So when you feel this energy going down, all you have to do is just let yourself go, let yourself stop. And in the present moment, if you just let go, if you just allow yourself to just, lay down, don't do anything, just slump into your fatigue. Maybe you have an illness, maybe you have a cold, maybe you're just extremely fatigued one day. These are the moments when we can change timeline. So all you have to do is just let go. And once you let go and you let yourself be quiet, you'll get to this sweet spot in the middle that normally people think it's not so sweet, because it's a void, but it's a creative void. And this is when everything starts to happen. But we are afraid of reaching this point because historically, in our past, in humanity, normally people have stretched the timeline so much that the only way to collapse into the creative void was via some tragic event. So if you realize that, you don't have to go to the tragic event. You don't have to densify the experience so much. Just stop resisting. Let yourself go. Let yourself just get tired and run down, fall asleep. Then you touch that creative void. And there can be a moment here where you can feel maybe like an intense loneliness, or a sense of like if there were no purpose, if there wasn't any purpose in life, and it's a strange void and it's an uneasy feeling, but it's momentary. It lasts very little, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, not more. And once you touch this point where nothing makes sense anymore, that realization makes a lot of sense. Because what doesn't make sense anymore is to repeat a pattern. And when you're at this point, since it's a creative void, you start from nothing. So there's a sense of aloneness or singularity and a sense of purposelessness. So, but if we let ourselves touch rock bottom, and if you touch rock bottom at this level, it's not that hard. It's really very, very easy. You might not even perceive it. And the truth is that quite often we do it and we don't even realize it. But you just let yourself go. You touch the creative void, and then suddenly you wake up, or you stop being fatigued, or you stop being tired, or it's the next day, and you everything's changed, and you feel really creative. And this is what has happened here is that you've jumped into another timeline. So then you're experimenting in the past and the future, a new pattern. And the ideal thing is to experiment a little bit of pattern and then let it go, as life itself tells you, because you don't have to force it. you'll just feel the moment where you feel that anxiety and that sadness, where you feel that you're getting tired, and just let it go, and then you begin a new timeline.